Does skipping meals cause you to die? I'm Dr. Eric Westman, and I'm reviewing a paper that was sent to me. Thank you for your ideas of things to review. Videos that you see or papers are all fair game. I'm a professor at Duke University and trained in evidence-based medicine, going back to McMaster, before it was called evidence-based medicine. And I'm a professor in the Division of General Internal Medicine, which is known as the teaching group within universities. So we teach residents and students, and one of the things we focus on is we're kind of like the critics of medicine, if you will, like the Siskel and Ebert back in the day of looking at other papers and criticizing what are good ones and bad ones. I've been doing this now for a few decades. So meal skipping, is it okay to do? Is it now? Probably the number one thing I have to sort of erase in people's minds is that you don't have to have breakfast if you're not hungry. It's just, it kind of makes sense, right? In fact, someone in my practice kind of broke down and cried when she heard that she didn't have to have breakfast. She hated breakfast. She never wanted to have breakfast. She was told she had to have breakfast all her life, and she wasn't in her teens anymore. And so finally, as an adult, I said, you don't have to have breakfast. And she cried. This is great. I've never wanted breakfast. So I go on the theory, the kind of recommendation that if you're not hungry, within reason, you shouldn't eat. Don't feel like you have to eat meals at 3 meals a day and all. And a lot of people are taught to do that, especially if you have diabetes. You're taught to eat meals with snacks. That's because you're on medicine that can make the blood sugar go too low. So once you get off the medicines, you don't have to have frequent feedings to keep the blood sugar from going too low. I know it's kind of complicated, but let your body tell you what to do. And so in this paper, meal skipping and shorter meal intervals are associated with increased risk of all-cause and cardiovascular disease mortality among U.S. adults. And it's a academic group, out of Memphis, the University of Tennessee, and they're actually using a big database, the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. So this is our tax dollars at work, where people are interviewed, surveys are done, and using 24-hour recall. So again, one of the problems of this kind of research is you don't really see what people are eating or document. You ask them what they're eating and they tell you. And that's fraught with problems. if you don't want your doctor to know you're having a liter of Coke, or the researcher coming every day, then you might not tell the person that. But so this is what I would say is a fishing expedition of a study, meaning it's not an experiment where you take people going forward. You say, now you eat 3 meals a day with snacks, and you skip meals, only have 2, and let's follow you over time and see what happens. No, this is someone else. The government has collected all of this information. In fact, there are 24,000 adults in here. And this is an interesting thing. If you need a study with 40,000 or 20,000 or 10,000 people to find a small difference, that's kind of a small difference. And you don't, so if you give someone an antibiotic and their sinusitis goes away, you can find that it's better in one person. But if you have to do a study that has thousands of people to see a difference, if it's a difference, it's going to be a small one. And this one, it was kind of easy. I didn't even download behind the paywall the $35 to look at the study, because they did a nice job of putting the information in the abstract. Of course, that's a little pearl that sometimes the information isn't put in correctly in the abstract. Sometimes it is. And so here, even though there were 185,000 people followed over time, or person years, the number of people times the years they were followed, 4,175 deaths occurred, including 878 cardiovascular deaths, and most people ate 3 meals a day. Compared to participants eating 3 meals a day, the multivariable adjusted hazard ratio, so this is technical term, statistics, where they try to account for other things before making the comparison of each variable. For example, I did a study once where I went out to county fairs when I was a resident, and I thought maybe there was a link between chewing tobacco and blood pressure. I was interested in tobacco research, and it was a study we could do without any money, so we got approved to actually check the blood pressure and ask people if they were chewing tobacco at a county fair. And it turns out that we found an association of higher blood pressure with the chewing tobacco users. And it was a relatively, maybe 10 millimeters of mercury. It was kind of a big difference, not just, 0.1 or 1 millimeter of mercury. Blood pressure might range, from 100 to 140 on the systolic number. Well, it turns out I then go to take that information. I published it as a letter to the editor, and then I went to a clinical training program where we learned about multivariable adjustment. And all that means is you account for everything else before you test the variable you're interested in. So I took the data that I had used in residency, and as a fellow, I'm doing statistics. I'm a master's in biostatistics. I learned how to do multivariable adjustment. And in the information that I collected, it turns out that the people who chewed tobacco were older than those who didn't chew tobacco. So I collected the variable age. And when I put in the blood pressure, now looking at whether they chewed tobacco or not, but I put in age to adjust for age, and then the blood pressure, age, then the chewing tobacco, there was no relationship. So the reason people had higher blood pressure and the chewers is they were older. Now, we know getting older raises the blood pressure. So this is called a confounder. And this is why you have multivariable adjustments. This is a very simple one. You want to account for age before you look. If age is related to blood pressure, you want to be sure you're accounting for it. So it turned out it wasn't the chewing tobacco at all, but just that probably not. It was probably that they were just older. So getting back to the paper, if you have all of these different factors, you're adjusting for them, and then the relationship between whatever you're worried about here, it's eating 3 meals a day or eating 1 meal a day. The hazard ratio and odds ratio are very similar. It just depends what kind of study it is. The eating 1 meal a day was 1.3 higher for all-cause mortality. Now here's a pearl. In evidence-based medicine, cause and effect medicine, if there's a relationship in an observational study like this that's less than 2, you can just dismiss it. Don't even look. It was 1.3, so that's less than 2. For heart disease, it was 1.8. Participants who skipped breakfast had a multivariable adjusted hazard ratio of 1.4. So it turns out these are very weak associations in prospective studies, but it was observational, not experimental. Moreover, you're asking people what they're eating, you're not really measuring it. And so I can just kind of say, well, this is statistically significant because the 95% confidence limit did not cross 1. That's how you can tell. There aren't any p-values in the abstract, but if the 95% confidence limit doesn't cross 1, then it's statistically significant. So you have statistical significance, but not clinical significance in this one. So I'm not compelled to tell you any different. So if you're hungry, eat, within a reasonable realm of food. And if you're interested in reversing type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, fatty liver, PCOS, obesity, you can use a low-carb keto diet in order to be the food that helps you reverse these conditions. I tell people to eat if you're hungry, don't eat if you're not hungry, and everyone kind of comes up with their own pattern of eating. And for goodness sake, if you were told you had to have breakfast and you don't want to have breakfast, don't have breakfast. It's okay. You'll be just fine. Oh, and who probably came up with that term, I don't know exactly, but it's probably the cereal manufacturers who came up with that, the breakfast is the most important meal of the day because they wanted you to have their cereal. So I hope that's helpful. This one, no, the odds ratios are too small. You can dismiss it out of hand. And I don't worry if you just eat 1 meal a day, 2 meals a day, if you're getting great nutrition, that is. And there are a lot of ways to eat in a healthy manner. If you want to learn more about what we do, just click down below. And if you don't have my top 10 tips on how to start keto right, look in the description below. I hope that's helpful. Click like if you like it, subscribe so you don't miss out on further videos, and send us videos and studies to comment on. Thanks for this one. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and check out adaptyourlifeacademy.com.